for checking out the Sportsline Podcast on CHCH. I'm Bubba O'Neil. As we love to brag and boast, speaking to and uncovering amazing sports stories from Southern Ontario, and in particular, the Golden Horseshoe, is why we're here. Today, a local lover of the NBA who's a veteran broadcaster, and now he's a rookie writer. His name is Eric Smith. He hails from Burlington, and here's what some are saying about his new creation, We the Raptors, 30 players, 30 stories, 30 years. From our own Hamilton's Kia Nurse, We the Raptors takes a fresh and compelling look at the team's history through the lens of 30 unforgettable role players. It's a fascinating and rewarding read for true fans of basketball and of the Toronto Raptors. And quite honestly, from the best analyst in sports, Jack Armstrong, We the Raptors is a must-read for any Raptors fan. It offers rare, honest reflections from players who built Toronto's basketball legacy. A soulful, behind-the-scenes look at growth, grit, and what it truly meant to wear the jersey. Well, let's bring in the author of We the Raptors, Eric Smith. Great to see you, partner.
Good to see you.
Well, I'm going to say you are our big-time writer now. Like, how on earth does that feel? I mean, broadcaster for a long, long time. You've been in front of a microphone for a long time. But what about translating words onto paper?
Yeah, definitely a major transition, something I did not think would ever happen. And I'm still, there's still times I look down at the book and think, man, I don't know how this came to be. And I have to give a massive shout out right off the bat to my co-author, which, by the way, I don't even know if you know this, co-author, also brother-in-law, Andrew Bricker. Oh. So there's an added little tie-in that's kind of a cool little story to how this book came to be. But I'm certainly very proud of it, and I hope that people have enjoyed it and will continue to enjoy it over the coming weeks and months and years.
Let me ask you this before we get deep into the book, because there are some things that obviously you take care of. The Raptors right now, 6-5 right now. Mm-hmm. The post-Messiah Ujiri era, if you want to call it that, if you wanted to break it down and put it into a book. I feel like going into this season, the years of retooling are complete. Are we seeing a competitive team that could make the playoffs?
I think we are. If you and I had this conversation a month ago before the season started, I would say I believe the Raptors are a playoff team, and not even a play-in. Mm-hmm. I think they have a chance to be a top 6 team and get a locked-in playoff spot. I think that when you look at the core of the starting 5, there's a lot of talent there. I think there's chemistry amongst a lot of the guys that are carryovers from last year. Brandon Ingram being the newest face, but he's still been here since March. He was practicing with the team. He was training with the team, even though he wasn't playing late last year, then training and working together in the offseason. Then you look at the second unit. Most of the guys here from last year. So the chemistry, the continuity, a team that says they're rooted in defense, and I think in a lot of nights they are, but in today's NBA, with the way that the game is called, any team that says they're a defensive team is still giving up 48, 50, 52% and 100 or 120 points, and they're still a good defensive team because that's the way the NBA is now. It's. I looked down the other day, just as a quick aside, I believe it was the score going into the fourth quarter, and this wasn't even a Raptor game. It was the Knicks and Nets or something. The score was like 105 to 87 at the end of 3. And I'm like, what is happening? Yep. You know, I think at the half the Knicks had 75 points. This is a score at the end of the game in the 90s or the late 90s. I just think the way the game's being called now is so tough. So for the Raptors to be defensive rooted, at least in terms of pressure and trying to get out on the fast break and play unselfish and move the ball. I know Darko Rakovic says he wants 30 assists a night minimum. He wants guys sharing it all the time. That's why we're seeing RJ Barrett's been a top scorer this year, as is Brandon Ingram, as has Scotty Barnes, Emmanuel quickly stepping up. There's a lot of different weapons, and I think their depth makes them dangerous overall. I'm not sitting here saying that they're going to compete for the championship this year, but I think they're kind of building and on that path towards being good again and putting aside and behind that sort of rebuild, retool that you were talking about. You know, and of course, when a team gets off to a start like this, that's been kind of a non-factor really on the national scale or international scale like the Raptors have been since winning, obviously, the title in 2019, getting real close the next year after that, and the COVID year, exceptional and those kind of things. People are already making up trade scenarios and stuff like that. But in all honesty, Eric, is this a team that you just want to ride this out with what they have, or do you see some tweaking at the end? I think there's probably some tweaking coming at some point, but at what point, I don't know. Because, I mean, we're only 11 games in right now, Game 12 coming up later on tonight. I tend to think I want to see at least a quarter of a season, at least, before I start thinking, like, what do I need to change or what might adjust or fix things? Because do you really know what you are yet? I would say even the flip of the calendar. I'm throwing an arbitrary number. Maybe waiting half a season is too long, but is 30 a sweet spot? It's not 20. It's not 40. It's right in the middle of those 30 games, essentially, for argument's sake, a third of the season to really see. But also, are you prepared to potentially, and again, we're talking like fantasy scenarios here, are you potentially prepared to change your future for the present already? Are you really thinking that you're one piece away? So now you're going to trade 1, 2, 3 young players plus 1, 2, 3 future picks to get that big fish is it really going to be what puts you over the top? Or are you, to your point, better to kind of play it out, have a year, make it in, get some experience, and then kind of, read between and sift through the lines and the weeds and say, all right, now we know for sure this is what we need. Because I'll tell you, their big splash, or at least a bigger splash than what they've had, might already be here in a former All-Star, one of the great scorers in the game, as long as he can stay healthy, in Brandon Ingram. Yeah. How much of a difference does he make alongside of Scotty Barnes? So I would be taking more of the cautious approach right now with them in terms of not going and doing anything too crazy yet.
Well, I hope that's what they do. I mean, all this talk about Ja Morant, and I know this is, again, a lot of fantasy stuff that goes on, and of course there's Twitter right now, so there's more chatter, and Anthony Davis, and I'm like, no, stop it. Stop it. We finally have a good, young, healthy team that seems to like each other and play together. And I'm not saying 2019's coming, but we do want to see this team make the postseason. Speaking of successes, what maybe some people do not know is that you are a part of the Blue Jays broadcast crew. And we talk about 2019 and reaching the top of the mountain. And although they didn't get to the top of the mountain, Game 7 in the World Series is almost at the top of the mountain. Your experience this year calling the Blue Jays, and did you see any of this coming?
I didn't see it come. Well, let's say this. Going back to, so I started doing the Blue Jay broadcast last year at backing up Ben Shulman, who's done a fantastic job. So I did about a quarter of the season last year, just shy of a quarter of the season this year. And when I look at the way that this team flipped the switch from last season and where they were in 2024 to what they became in 2025, even early in 2025, I'd be lying if I sat here and said, oh yeah, for sure, I saw them, finishing first in the division and going to the World Series and having a 1-run lead with 1 out in the 9th inning, which I still don't know if I'm totally over. And I was there for Game 6 and 7. I was in attendance, and it was just a killer. I think it was ESPN that had it afterwards. I believe it was I'm not normally into the stats and analytics in terms of winning percentage and this and that and all what the numbers say, but I think it was an ESPN that said it was a 91.7% chance of winning that game with a 4-3 lead, 1 out in the 9th with the number 9 hitter coming to the plate. It was a 91.7% chance of winning. So, no, I didn't see this turnaround coming. But I've talked to enough athletes as you have and coaches as you have over the years. And I feel like, you tell me if I'm wrong or if you've had a different perspective, there's at least half that say it's BS, it doesn't matter. There's another half that say absolutely. Not only what I said earlier about the Raptors, chemistry and continuity, but that unwritten, unseen magic, that lightning in a bottle, that the feeling of winning, the residue of winning, and the carryover effect of just like you kind of have that aura, that attitude about you. And when you think of what happened to this Blue Jay team, 1 win became a couple of wins, became a 4-game winning streak, became a 5-game winning streak, became all of a sudden we're climbing the standings. Well, now we think we're good and we think we're better and we start playing better and we have this attitude about us. And again, there's a lot of people that say, that's bogus. You either are or aren't talented. But I believe there is something to be said for that unwritten vibe, the feel good, and that carries over. I mean, I not to get too fluffy about this, I tend to think it carries over into all our lives.
Absolutely.
If you wake up feeling crappy, you're probably going to have a crappy day.
Yep.
If you wake up with a bit of an attitude, you're probably going to carry that attitude into work and into your coworkers or whoever. And it's going to take somebody that's smiling or that tells you a joke or that says something nice to you that changes your attitude or not. And now suddenly you're feeling better. And maybe you're sitting up a little straighter. Maybe you're smiling a little more. And now you're projecting better, at least in terms of what we do. And you're not talking kind of like you're down, you're slumped. I feel like that matters.
Yep.
And I think that translates into pro sports. And for the Jays, I think that's what happened to them. I think it just kind of started going. And you think of the fact that it came in a season where I think Vladdy had a very good year, but he didn't have a great year.
No, it wasn't his best year at all.
You had to deal with injuries with Bo Bichette and others, but it was Lucas stepping up and Schneider stepping up and Clement stepping up and the rest that goes on. And then, like, obviously the late season, addition of other guys that came in that helped with this team, like Trey Savage being most notable. And suddenly those guys not only keep doing it late, they do it into the playoffs too. That doesn't happen. That doesn't happen if it's not for some magic in a bottle, like lightning flashes. And I think hopefully, you knock on wood and cross your fingers that it can happen again for the Jays next year. And
the proof in the pudding to that statement, and I do believe in team chemistry. I think it can carry you. I think it can give you extra wins. I think it can give you extra belief. The proof in the pudding to me is all you have to do is, and this was the good of social media, on Instagram, how many of the player wives have put statements out there talking about what a magical year this was. So not only was it magical for their husbands on the field, about the relationships that some of them over just a year, some of them less than a year, that they say, we've never been a part of anything like this.
Yeah.
And hey, what's that? I mean, you're married. I'm not. Happy wife, happy life.
Yes.
I mean, so if they're enjoying the vibe as well too, that's got to be good for that meant that locker room and the relationships all around it and surrounding it were a good thing. So.
I mean, to me, I think it's only, again, I don't want to sound arrogant about it and say, well, if you don't agree with me, you're wrong. But, like, how could that not be the case? If you're winning more, you would assume generally be a little more happy. And to your point about the significant others, they're probably going to want to go to more games. If you're losing, I'm okay, I'll stay home tonight. Maybe I'll come to the one tomorrow night or I'll come next week. But they're winning. I want to be around it more.
Yeah.
And the more they're winning, you're feeling better. So you're having a better time and you're hanging out. You're getting to know people more. You're around more because you're attending more games, et cetera. Again, I use the work analogy of any workforce right now. You're working in a hospital or in a law office or you're working at a construction site or whatever. If you're having a good time and enjoying the people around you and you're all reaping the benefits and you're all seeing the success or you're pulling for each other, is that not going to be a better time day to day than just going with a bunch of people you don't like? Exactly.
Not work.
Exactly.
Speaking of work, your work. Let's get into the book here. Basic question. Why write a book about the Raptors?
That's a very good question. So I mentioned my brother-in-law, Andrew, the co-author of the book, who did a ton of the heavy lifting for this as well. During COVID, he reached out to, he didn't even reach out to me. He probably reached out to my wife, his sister, and just chatting one time, as we were all doing and catching up with people. So he is an English history professor at Ghent University in Belgium. A Canadian guy, but got a job overseas almost a decade ago. So we're catching up over Zoom during COVID. He's talking with, my wife, his sister, and my son, his nephew. And at some point, we end up on the line together. And he just, out of the blue, you ever thought about writing a book? I said, what the heck are you talking about? What, like, no, why? No, huh? What? He's like, due respect to my university and my career and everything else. He's like, I've written books and I've been in journals and everything else and literary reviews and you name it. I'd like to do something fun, like get away from English history or that stuff. I'd like to, like, a kind of a passion project. I am still a big sports fan, big basketball fan. I feel like we could collaborate on something. And initially, I selfishly or arrogantly and stupidly thought he was talking about, like, a book about me or something. I'm like, who the hell would want to read that? Nobody wants to read that book. But as we started talking a little bit more, I realized, okay, it's an NBA book. It's a Raptors book. But what is the book? And I kind of pushed it aside and put it on the back burner for quite a while. And as COVID dragged on, and we were all looking to just find something to do with our lives and find our creative juices in some way, shape, or form, and try to get away from our brains of what the hell is happening to the world and the future and everything else, I started to warm to the idea of, like, all right, maybe there's something to do. Maybe I could, find something to do with my time and do this. So this is the genesis of this, as Andrew and I started kind of flushing out a bunch of ideas. As sports fans, and I know you're right there and a lot of your audiences as well, we have had this conversation about the Leafs and the Raptors and the Blue Jays and the Ticats and the Argos, and we've had this conversation about the Marlins and the Heat and you name it. In Madrid, in London, like I'm talking UK, let alone London, Ontario, we constantly have these conversations about who's the top 3, who's the top 5, who's the top 10, who's the Mount Rushmore, right? Whether it's hockey or football or baseball or basketball or soccer, whatever it is, we always want to make these lists, top 3, top 5, top 10, whatever. I feel like I'm going to put you on the spot, and I know you've read part of the book, so maybe you already know the answer, kind of, sort of. But in no order, who are the top 5 Raptors in franchise history? There's no wrong answer, but I'm going to test you and see if what you say is. So who are the top 5 Raptors in franchise history?
Well, for me, and I know it's
No order.
No order. Okay, so good. No order. Vince Carter, DeMar DeRozan. I would put Kawhi there, even though it was real short.
Okay.
I would put Chris Bosh there, and then I would have to put Kyle Lowry there.
Yes.
Those are probably the 5 that everyone would say in different orders.
And by the way, cameras where? Over here? This was not set up. This was not set up.
Okay.
Those are the 5. And that's with absolutely zero disrespect intended to anybody else, because Fred VanVleet is, I think, right there knocking on the list with the career he had and how important he was to the Raptors, as is Pascal Siakam right there knocking on the door.
Yes.
We could talk about a Damon Stoudemire, and again, no disrespect to Damon, as great as he was in Rookie of the Year, he was only here for 3 years, not even 3 full seasons. Ditto for a guy like Tracy McGrady, 3 years, but really only played a year and a half and gone. So those guys might be in the top 10, but I don't think they're top 5. I think that the top 5 are the 5 you said for many of the reasons you said, and I think they're locked in. But then I say to myself, what about everybody else, though, including whether it be Fred or Pascal or Jonas Valanciunas and Morris Peterson and Norm Powell, and again, I could give you a million names. What about all these other guys that, and you've been around watching this team from 95, 96, the first season, as have I. I've been there covering the team since the second season. I've been there broadcasting the team in some way, shape, or form since the 4th season. And I think back and I go, man, I remember looking up into the stands, and I saw a lot of number 20 Damon Stoudemire jerseys, but I saw number 3 Jean Tabak jerseys. I saw number 13 Doug Christie jerseys. I saw like 54 Popeye Jones. And then I'm like, okay, yeah. All right. When Kyle and DeMar in 7 and 10, I also saw a lot of number 8 Jose Calderon and 15 Amir Johnson, and later on, like I saw 15 Jorge Garbajosa, and I saw 18 Anthony Parker. Like I saw a lot of these jerseys. Chris Bosh is there, yeah, but I also saw 11 for TJ Ford. I remember Jarrett Jack jerseys. And again, the list goes on. And in the Kawhi era, obviously with Kyle still as well, 17 Jonas Valanciunas, 24 Norm Powell, 14 Danny Green. And again, the list goes on of all of these guys that for whatever reason left an imprint on that team, on the city, on the fan base, on the wins or losses, on this respective season or seasons that said player played. So I was like, what if we told their stories? Because again, all respect intended, no disrespect intended. We've heard most of the stories, and rightfully so, of Kyle and DeMar and Vince and Kawhi and Chris Bosh. But have we really heard a lot about what Jose Calderon truly felt, or what Amir Johnson, why he felt such an attachment, and why he wanted to do the zombie walk up and down Yonge Street, and why he wanted to live here year-round, even though he was a California kid, and why he still has roots here in Canada? How about a guy like a Jason Capono or a Tyler Hansbrough or Gravis Vasquez or a Bismack Biyombo? What was it about their short time in Toronto that they loved so much and the imprint that it left? Let's tell their stories and their versions of the Raptors, and then put it down onto paper, and then tell kind of a history of the team. This was never intended to be, and it isn't, with due respect to, I keep saying no disrespect because I'm a nice guy. with due respect to coffee table books, I didn't want this to be like picture, paragraph. Like, I wanted this to be a novel, a book, and tell stories, but stories you maybe haven't heard, or if they are stories you've heard, from a different angle, from a different lens, from a different voice. And that's how the concept came together. And the only reason the 30 is in there is because, again, going back to COVID, like, I guess the 30th anniversary season's coming up. What if we got like 30 guys? It's not really an anniversary book, but it is in the sense that we're kind of telling the history, but it's not like, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then, like, no, it's their stories, and then we use their stories to formulate eras and moments within the 30 years, and that's how it came together. And the next question you might ask, as I ramble a very, very long answer here, is, well, what about this guy and what about this guy that weren't in the book? Or how'd you decide on the 30? And the best and most honest answer I can give you is, and Andrew has said this in other interviews, so I have to give him credit for this line. This was never meant to be an encyclopedia. So it could have been 30 other guys. It could be 30 other guys. Like, we could have done a book of not just 30 players. We could have done 60 or 90
Easy.
or 100 plus.
Easy.
So it really came down to guys that, we could get, period. That's being the most honest. Like, I could give you a list of guys that texted me, emailed me, or called me and said, I love it. I'm in. Yes. And then just wouldn't,
tracking them down,
couldn't lock them down for an interview, or they disappeared, or they ghosted me, or whatever after initially saying yes. So it was A, who is gettable, but also B, who also has interesting stories to tell, or different angles, as I said, those different lenses. And what I found too, as I was doing the interviews, I was learning things about the players that I didn't even know, and I thought I knew a lot of the stuff, and getting into more personal things that I was not aware that guys would ultimately open up about, either whether it be in current day personal life or in the past, or things about their parents or their grandparents that helped formulate who they were and shape and mold who they were as people, as individuals, let alone as players. So all that stuff that came out, I can't thank those guys enough for their honesty and how forthcoming they were with the stories and the information they shared.
You know,
I know that was a very long answer. I apologize.
That's fine. That's fine, because you spoke the truth and you gave us a great history there. But the thing is, why this is genius is because exactly what you just said. We're getting into the Christmas time of season. Sports books are coming out. Here's another book about VC. Look, and again, I'll use your line with all due respect.
You're a nice guy too.
Yeah, Vince is a nice guy, right? I mean, but we know everything, and you're right. And you know what? As much as we love Kawhi and how much he had to do with 2019 and winning and getting us finally over the hump, his story's still kind of being written as well too. Yeah. These are stories that I don't think that are quite, to me, as someone that's embroiled in sports, and to the Raptor purists, and there's a lot out there in this city, in this general area, they're well knowledge on these people, and it's not gripping. And you're right. Just to get to where I am right now, I'm approaching a chapter in the book with Chris Childs. And I remember Chris Childs, and I have my feelings about Chris Childs, and I can't wait to dig into that as well, too, because there's a couple problems I had with him. But regardless, though, these are the stories that need to be told that I think that will tickle the fancy of not only the Raptor fan, but the guy that's been watching, or the woman that's been watching this team for some time and maybe stepped away, came back, whatever, and say, oh, I remember that era. Oh, I was in love with that player. You know, he was fun to watch. So that's why this, to me, is absolute genius, and I think I'm salivating thinking about it because it's so juicy. I'm going to name you a couple of people. Obviously, you can't give away the book, but I will name you a couple of people that, you know what, maybe you don't have to tell me the story in the book, but maybe your thoughts of these two individuals. Okay. Now, of course, this one person may be one of the most top 5 most popular people in Jerome Williams, the Junkyard Dog. Go.
You want a little bit from the book, or just Jerome in general?
You don't have to give away the book, but I mean, or whatever you want to do.
When you think about a Jerome Williams, what did I say earlier, even about a Tracy McGrady or a Damon Stoudemire or whatever? Go back and check the stats. I don't mean you. I'm talking to anybody. Go back and look at how long Jerome Williams was actually here.
He averaged 7.9 points in his Raptor career.
And he wasn't here very long.
4 years.
But he left such an imprint. And why? Because of the way he played on the floor, but also the way he interacted with the fans, the way he interacted with his team. And he became a caricature in many senses, but not just a towel-waving dude at the end of the bench, even though there are guys in this book that might fit that mold as well, the dude at the end of the bench, but also who still has a role. He was still a player and an energizer and a spark plug, mostly off the bench, but as a spot starter from time to time as well. And the cool thing with Jerome, with this book specifically in the interview, was when I interviewed Jerome, and I did all of the interviews some of them were done in person, but any interview that wasn't done in person was done not just audio, it was video. Like, I did them on Zoom. Because I had this idea at one point where maybe this could be put into like a documentary at some point or whatever. But then, of course, last year being the actual 30th anniversary season, there were so many fantastic, 30th anniversary documentaries done by the Raptors and by Sportsnet, by all the sports networks and everything else, that the Zoom quality, raw footage that I had was not gonna cut it, no pun intended. So we just kind of decided to get against that. But anyways, I could show you the clip afterwards of, as we're talking, I said, Jerome, I'm recording this as well. It's going to be on video. And he's like, oh, hold on. And he reaches like just off camera and he grabs his Raptor hat and he puts it on. It might actually have been a We the North hat. But either way, the fact that that was still there, readily accessible in his office, and he hasn't even been here for damn near 20 years. Like, he's visited the city many times, but I'm talking about as a player. That, to me, just tells me how important the Raptors are to him still to this day. And the fact that he still does come back as much as he does tells me how much the city and the fan base means to him. And he realizes how important he is to them as well. And the stories that he shared about coming to Canada for the first time when he was playing for Georgetown with Allen Iverson, and not even realizing as a young kid that, like, they were packing and prepping for a flight that they thought was going to be like 8 hours, and they no sooner got up and the pilot saying, "We're beginning our descent," and they're already, he's like, "What? We're in Canada already?" And he tells a story that I believe we put in the book about, and back when he was here in Toronto and in Canada, we still have the $2 bill, not the toonie, the coin, but the actual $2 bill, and he's got one kept. And I don't know if I can't remember now if each guy tried to get one or if they just had one communal one for the team and they all signed it, whatever. And it was like this, because it was this, what the hell, a $2 bill, and they kept it. And he loved it. He said that when he landed, he realized, like, this is just like the U.S. And he said, "Oh, there's a Popeye's chicken. Like, that's where I got to go. That's where I got to go have my lunch or whatever." So Jerome is just a great personality and a solid guy. And he was one of the guys that, when I thinking of 30 players and thinking of those role players, like, that's a guy that right top of mind is like, for sure you have to get Jerome Williams in there.
Another player, we've seen injuries in our lives, calling sports, watching sports.
I know exactly where you're going here.
And I think of, look, a lot of times you see guys rolling around, they're hurting, they're moaning and they're groaning. But it's been very rare that I can remember an athlete virtually screaming in pain. And I remember this one individual that, if I remember correctly, on the hardwood in Boston, screaming because of his injury. It hurt that much. And obviously, as a fan of him, actually, I thought, because I really like this player, was watching Jorge Garbajosa, who lasted all of 74 games as a Raptor. He's in the book too.
So he had, you recounted the story well. So I was calling the game in Boston with Paul Jones, my longtime broadcast partner. We're now in our 21st season together, Jonesy and I. So we've seen a lot of stuff together over the years. And I don't think he would mind me telling you, because we joke about this with each other a lot. Anytime we see an injury, like, he's a big football fan as well. He's a big Cleveland Browns fan. Sorry, Jonesy. But anytime we see somebody get hurt, it seems to happen, unfortunately, more in football than any other sport. But with a foot or a knee or an ankle or a leg or something, he's like, I don't even want to see the clip. I don't want to see it. I don't want to see it. He can't watch. That night in Boston, we were towards the left end of the scores table, right by the Raptors bench. And it was closest to the basket where Jorge hurt himself. So we were, I don't know, 40, 50 feet away. And Al Jefferson got the ball, was heading down the court, playing for the Celtics. And it was pretty much a clear break. Like, it's one of those plays that 9 times out of 10, the opposing team, the opposing defender gives up on. You give up the open dunk. It's late in the game. The Raptors are losing anyways. The score is probably, for the most part, a foregone conclusion. Again, 9 times out of 10, you're going to let the guy go and just kind of give up the 2. That's not in Garbajosa's DNA, though. So he chases down Al Jefferson. He goes up for the block. Legs and bodies get tangled. He comes down to the floor, and immediately the leg just, is snapped, and it's in directions it should not be. And again, we're like 40, 50 feet away. He sits up, and you said it again, you described it perfectly. I have never heard a grown man, a grown person, an adult, or a child for that matter, scream and shriek with the fear and agony that I heard that night in Boston. It was like, I can still hear it in my brain. Jonesy picked up his chair and turned it around and was facing the stands. So I'm like deer in the headlights, just staring out at him as he's sitting up, and he's screaming. Jonesy is literally, his chair is pointing the other direction. He's looking at the stands. And and we're both trying to talk and describe. And Jose Calderon ran off I think he was on the bench at the time, ran off the bench and immediately ran over to Jorge, as did the trainers. And Calderon was almost sitting on his chest. Like, he was right over top of Garbajosa. The trainers put a towel over his leg so that Jorge couldn't see it, as he was, again, sitting up and just screaming in agony. And as Garbajosa recounted to us, I believe it was, I don't speak Spanish, but I believe it was tranquilo, like calm, like calm down. He just kept repeating it over and over and over to Jorge, trying to get him to just lay back and calm down and let people just deal with him and try to take care of him. And I thought recounting that story was important for the book in some senses, because I thought it was such a moment because of what you already brought up. A guy that played here, he played one season that ended early because of the injury, tried to come back the next year and just was unable to. And there was issues with, whether it be the medical staff in Spain versus the Raptors, and was he prepared to play, and could he play, and was the leg healthy enough, because he wanted to play for the Spanish national team as well. There's so many things going on, yet he's just like, tape me up. Get me back out there. I want to go. I'll play with the screws in my leg. Even if it's not 100%, I want to be out there. And then even going back to prior to when he was hurt, when he was, healthy for the start of that one season, really, that he had with the Raptors, he went from being a dude that was a veteran rookie that wasn't sure if he'd play for Sam Mitchell to suddenly being a starter, and a locked-in starter less than 2 weeks into the season.
He's good.
And a guy that fans loved. A guy that Vince Carter tapped on his chest and said, like, take care of that 15 for me.
That's right.
Because Garbajosa wore the 15 right after Vince. And then Vince literally said to him on the floor, like, you take care of that for me. Like, and Jorge kind of said, like, it's in good hands. Like, I got you kind of thing. And he's a guy that would have been, and I think he still is, even off the one season, a legendary Raptor, and go down in Raptor lore and history, and would be brought back time and time again, if not for the fact that he's living overseas and now one of the top executives working for FIBA. I thought he was a great guy to have in the book. And I'll tell you, this is the other tie-in to the two players you brought up in Jerome Williams and Jorge Garbajosa. Two great examples, as many others are in the book. I'd be interested in this perspective from you and from a lot of your audience that not just is in Hamilton and Burlington and Oakville and Niagara, but I know you've got all over the world, and let alone all over the GTA. I feel like Toronto gets looked at sometimes by Vancouver, and by Edmonton, and by Calgary, and by Montreal, and by Hamilton, and by Ottawa, by most of the country as like Toronto sticks their nose up at the rest of the country. Oh, Toronto, this very, prim and, well, maybe not prim and proper isn't the right word, but kind of this elitist or richer or like a white collar. I think Toronto's very much a blue collar. They might not be as blue collar as Steeltown, but I think Toronto's blue collar, and certainly the fan base is blue collar in the sense that, let's go back to our Blue Jay conversation from 20 minutes ago. Fans love, and should, the stars, Vladdy and Bo, and the list goes on. But they absolutely love and adore Clement, and Schneider,
yes, absolutely,
and Lucas, and over the years,
grinders.
Go back to like Rance Mullenix and Garth Orge, and I mean the list goes to John McDonald, Kelly Gruber, the list of all these guys that might not have been all-stars, but they were starters and mainstays and key role players and fan favorites. Think of the Toronto Maple Leafs. Yeah, Doug Gilmour, Matt Sundin, and Austin Matthews. Sure, okay, absolutely. But Ty Domi,
oh my goodness,
Wendell Clark. Like, I mean, again, we could make a huge list with the Toronto Maple Leafs, right?
Yes.
Same thing applies to the Toronto Raptors.
Yes.
Go back to the five. Vince, Kyle, DeMar, Kawhi, Chris Bosh. Yeah, sure. What about Jerome Williams, Jorge Garbajosa, and Norm Powell, and all these other dudes? Bismack Biyombo.
People
right?
love Calderon.
All of these guys that I think are bring the lunch pail, grind it out, work hard. They're not all-stars necessarily, but they're guys that are fan favorites and that do the work. And I think that's what makes them stand out. And I think part of the reason that makes them stand out is because of the way that the fan base appreciates them. So we love the stars, but we love the workers too, because I think we see ourselves a little bit more in the workers more than the superstars.
Very well said. Very well said. And I think you're right on that about Canadian sports fans. And yeah, in Toronto in particular, we do love our grinders. We love the guys that are the lunch bucket guys, the guys that we can relate to, that maybe don't make the zillion dollars. And that's a great point. And I think that's, again, why this book is so genius to me, because in those cases, too, if I may say, those are the people that are more willing to open up and tell stories about more so. They're not as guarded as maybe some of the star players are.
No, I think that's true. I mean, you mentioned Chris Childs earlier. I won't give away too much for you or for the audience because, selfishly, I'd love for people to go buy the book. But hey, I'm here to share some stories. Chris Childs got into battles with alcohol abuse and addiction and how it came very close to derailing his marriage and his relationship with his children, let alone his career, and how if he didn't go to rehab and get himself clean and straight, he might have died, let alone not had a career in the NBA, and credited John Lucas, the former Raptor assistant coach and longtime NBA and college coach, and he credited John Lucas for basically saving his life, let alone saving his career. Excuse me. And got extremely, extremely personal with a lot of the stories that he told in this book. And again, it got way away from the Toronto Raptors or the Raptor fan base or his NBA career, and it got very personal. So stuff like that comes out, I don't know if you get that from a lot of guys.
Well, now you just ruined it, because
I know you said you wanted to hate him or whatever.
I had a little love-hate relationship with him as a player, and now there's a whole new chapter of his life that I might have changed my opinions because of this.
I guarantee it's going to be one of your favorite chapters in the book. Wow. I guarantee it. And I'll tell you the other thing too. I don't know if we're wrapping up or if we're going to talk for another hour here, but on the cover of the book, and this is not meant as a cheap plug, you'll see Kyle Lowry's name on the front. Kyle Lowry wrote the foreword to the book. And somebody might be, well, hold on a second. You just told me that it's not about the top 5. It's just the foreword. And I felt it was important for me to get one of those 5 to validate everything that I wrote in the book and everything Andrew and I wrote together and everything we've just talked about. Because it's one thing for you and I to sit here and say, oh, they love the grinders and the teams wouldn't be the same without the grinders and those lunch pail guys and the role players, etc. But that's just you and I talking. What about on the inside? So if one of those top 5, and arguably, in many people's eyes, the GOAT, the greatest Raptor of all time, if he's willing to put his stamp down and say, yes, I agree with this theory or this thesis or the general theme behind this book, I agree, that just validates it right away. So even if the book doesn't ever sell, it validates the book. And I'll tell you, with no word of a lie, I barely got the question out of my mouth, and Kyle said yes. Say, I'm writing this book about, and I got this. Do you think you'd be willing to? Yeah, I'm in. Like, and you know you won't, like, you're not being paid, and yeah, I'm in. I'll do it. Sure, let's do it. When do you need it? He was in, because you'll read it in the foreword. He says, I'm not here, and I don't get to there, and I don't win this without them. That just stamps it.
The thing about Kyle, though, of those 5, the best 5 or the top 5, if you want to call it that, for in Raptors lore, he may be the most blue-collar grinder grit guy of those 5, right? The most glamorous, and again, why people love him so much, right? Little guy that could, sort of thing, kind of in the Domi mold, right? This little guy that stood up to the big guys and performed at a very, very high level. Let me get you out on this here. The writing process. Did this surprise you? Was there problems? Was there because we speak for a living, and as I said, this time you're translating your thoughts into a book and have to be concise and all the things, and not everything can make the book. How did that translate for you?
Again, as I said, I think right off the top, there is no book, and I'm not sitting here right now talking about the book if not for Andrew. I mean, he did yeoman's work, and he was incredible in terms of the amount of work he put into the writing and how good he was at collaborating with me in terms of trying to find ways to edit and get down, because even the publishers, the book should be 100,000 words. I think our first submission was 175,000. Like, we had to cut a lot. But we had a great back and forth, Andrew and I did, in terms of, I'll tell you this, what we're doing right now, and again, you can appreciate this, and hopefully your audience can as well. I'm looking at you right now. There's no index card. There's no cheat sheet. There's no nothing, right? You knew the first question you want to ask me, or you knew in your brain where you thought this conversation was going to go, but then it's just sitting here and having a conversation. Every single interview I did for the book, every single interview, and I could show you the videos to prove it, I didn't have one question written down. And I would make a point of telling the guys, I talked about Jerome reaching off camera. I would reach off camera and I'd literally grab a blank piece of paper. I'd say, hey, Jerome, hey, Tyler, Hansbrough, Bismack, do you see this? There is nothing here. It's just you and I talking. Let's just talk. And let's just see where the conversation goes. Now, I had a pen and I would jot down little bullet points from time to time if they said something I wanted to circle back to. But I had nothing written down. It was just free-flowing conversations, almost like doing a podcast. And some of the interviews were 3-4 hours long. Guys just chilling and just talking. And then something would come up. I mentioned Chris Childs, where it would get really personal, and we'd go down that path, and we might not get back to basketball. But it was just a better interview that way. So I think that when I'm then packaging this together and then handing off to Andrew, and then he's doing a chunk of the writing and then heading back to rewrites and edits and whatever else, it made it almost easier in some senses, because it was this conversation, not just like, and then this happened. Okay, but now this. And we had to fill in gaps. No, the players themselves were filling in the gaps. And we didn't just transcribe like, question, answer. But they filled in so much because of the type of conversation we had, the type of interview we had. I think it made the writing process that much easier for Andrew and for me to put it all together.
Would you do it again?
I would. I mean, it was a lot of work. It's something I never thought I would do, but I think I would do it again. And I'll tell you, maybe I'm giving too many good ideas to our colleagues in other sports, but I think it's a formula that could and would work for just about any sport and any team. Absolutely. But I think part of the reason it worked as well was because I had at least a working relationship, if not a bit of a personal relationship, with many of the players that are in the book. So if you ask me right now, or somebody said, "Oh, you should do one of these on the Ticats or on the Jays," or it might not be the same book because I don't have that same type of connection or relationship. I think part of it is because I've been around so many of these guys and been around the team for so long that made it what it is.
I think I think the sport too. I think it lends a lot to the sport, the Raptors itself. I think there have been books like this where I can recount about the Maple Leafs, and if there wasn't 30 players or whatever, it was 1 or 2 about grinders and grit guys and their stories about hockey lore. And with all due respect, it's kind of overdone for me personally, right? Some people can't get enough of the sport in that form, but I think it's the first of its type in terms of the Raptors. And 30 years, like, the Raptors are still a young franchise. Yeah. People forget that, right? Their history is still being built, right? There's another championship at some point to come, and other great stories to tell, right? And I think you've done a wonderful job here. I can't wait to keep reading this baby. I'm going to give you 30 seconds. Grab the book. Christmas is coming. Do me a commercial.
Oh, I don't know if I can give you a better commercial than what I've already done.
There you go.
Let's see, I'm almost dropping the thing.
There you go. Right now, we're going.
Which camera? Right here. Go. Honestly, it was years in the process of putting together, but I hope everybody enjoys it. I'm very proud of it. I truly am. And I don't want to sound too cliche about it, but the blood, sweat, and tears that went into it, hopefully it's worth it. I hope everybody enjoys it. And if I can humble brag for a second, I guess it's quasi breaking news. I said it to Bubba just before we got on the air, but I literally just found out this morning that it already is a national bestseller. So did I think that I could say that I'd be a writer, let alone a national best-selling writer? So that's the best plug I can get without sounding like I'm breaking my arm, patting myself on the back. So we'll leave it at that, I guess. Thank you all that have purchased or that might make the purchase.
Actually, will you do an audio version?
That is still in the works. I want to. I don't want to throw anybody under the bus here. I want to. I think it's important. It's still being discussed. I'm
enjoying books that way a lot these days. You stick it in your car and wherever you're like, it's the best way. And I think I hear the writer's emotion through the read. I think it's a wonderful way to read a book.
I would like to, and I'm sure that the people that need to make that decision are going to see this, and I might get slapped on the wrist, but I would like to do that, yes. So, but we'll see. We'll see where that goes.
Eric, I've said it before. You've been on this podcast before. Really, really proud of you. It is a treat for me when I'm not in the comfort of my couch at home enjoying a game with some of the the wonderful broadcasters that we have on television, to listen to you and Jonesy on the radio, call the game with preciseness and the love that you guys have for the sport and the Raptors as well too. Seeing that I know a little bit about your high school and where you've come from and Humber and all that stuff, and what you've accomplished. I mean, and you continue to do. And the book is now an addition to all of this. Continued success. Love what you're doing. Just love what you're doing, man.
I appreciate it. Thanks for all the support over the years. I mean, it's been a long time, so I appreciate everything you do. Thank you.
All right, man. Looking forward to number 2.
Thanks.
All right. Folks, that's your Sportsline Podcast for the day. And if you've just seen and heard, we do love talking sports, especially with some of our local heroes. If you do know of an athlete, team, or event to promote the Sportsline Podcast, want to hear from you, please hit that thumbs up, like, and subscribe button. And if you have something to say, please comment. For the outstanding people that make the Sportsline Podcast possible, thank you so very much. much. And we'll see you real soon.